Hi everyone, I'm Ovneet. I'm a second year student. I choose this topic because of an Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islanders. Now, I'm going to explain an inequality in education of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. So here is the statement of intent. The research, the fact, the genuine and the authentic engagement is required, as well as a proper consultation is needed and pertaining to the education policies that are implemented upon the indigenous people of Australia. Moreover, with an ever increasing engagement and involvement of an Aboriginal Torres Strait Islanders proper in the processes of decision making in the indigenous education, it is expected that there will be a facility for a better outcomes, results, and a greater acceptance of the different policies inside the community. Furthermore, the research will also show the needs for the better education system and for the Aboriginal and Torres Islanders of an Australian people. So here is the purpose of the study. So this topic has been chosen because there is a negligible to no literature or discourse about the state of the education system, which pertains to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. This topic is written because there needs to be more discourse and research on the topic of the education that is being given to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders and the quality of that educations. And I took these hints from an article or a book of Harrison and Salwood, 2016. Furthermore, everyone deserves the right to have advanced and good facilities of education, and their background must not hinder their quality of education, and they also deserve the rights of having a good quality of education and a good job profiles. No one should be discriminated on their backgrounds, either good or bad, and should have the provisions of gaining the proper amount of education, and that is needed to have a good future. Now, going to the next slide. So here is our fourth slide, which includes the learning outcomes. The first and the foremost, the research, which includes the using the different kinds of sources, either qualitative or the quantitative, or both. It will open a wide range of research areas for the further study of the education system for an Aboriginal of an Australian peoples. And the last learning outcome is students will form a hypothesis on the gaps in the literature that are still present in the research areas and pertaining to those topics which are included and very important to the outcomes. So here is our next slide, which includes the literature reviews. So this paper research upon the aims of the government on identifying the possibilities for the improvement in the indigenous students' engagements. Moreover, and the progress that would brings in the Australian schools. It researched about the educational practices and the representational practices that explore the various representations of the world. and how these presentations can be taught to the students in schools in a manner that would support the successful education and learning of the indigenous students. This content I took from the Harrison et al. 2019. Moreover, it explores the learning as well as teaching process in Aboriginal people, and it provides a concise help and guiding the light for the teachers so that they can prepare themselves for the process of teaching the Aboriginal and the Torres Strait Islander students in many areas such as rural, urban primary, as well as the secondary schools. So it also helps the teachers. The book includes the perspectives of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders in the program and the curriculums. So the aim of this book is to keep the things as genuine as possible and to help the local community work closely upon the crucial areas for the successful teaching of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students by Harrison and Salvo 2016. Furthermore, it also investigates the role of culture in the context of the emotional and social well-being of an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students. The benefits of the social as well as emotional learning that is very much related to their culture. Adding more to this paper gives an illustrative overview that produced questions of the cultures as well as a difference in the cultures. It introduced a research on the policies and the domain of practices that is important to the inquiry by Dobia and Rofi 2017. Now going further to the next slide. So here is the outline of the research steps, which include the three sources of the evaluation, which I already taught. The Dobia and the Rofi 2017, Harrison and Salvo 2016, Harrison et al. 2019. So the methodology for this research will be philosophical and theoretical as well as qualitative approach, which will evaluate the different policies and research that have been conducted till the date. So the next one is the audience, which includes the human rights and the cultures of an indigenous people. So the audience for the presentation will be the students who can lobby for the protection of the human rights and the culture of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who have been oppressed for too long, and their rights and the culture's integrity needs to be heard. So here is the conclusion. Everything is included in the conclusion at the end, so which I told about the Aboriginal and the Torres Strait Islanders. So this research paper addressed the culture and the educational concerns of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. The key findings of the research is that the people of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders needed to have an updated form of curriculum that will include their cultures in the education, so that not only them but the other students who do not belong from the community can also learn from the culture of an Torres Strait Islanders and from the Aboriginal culture. So At last, these are the sites through I got an information and the content and did a research on my project. So these are the references which I used. The first one is a Dobia B. Rofe 2017, which I use for the respect for the culture and the social and the emotional learning with the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander youth. The second one is Harrison and Salvo 2016, which I used for the learning and the teaching purposes for an Aboriginal education. Third is Harrison and Tennant C. Vass 2019, which I used for a systematic review and curriculum and learning prospectus for the Aboriginals. The fourth one is Price K. Rogers 2019, which I use for the education of an Aboriginal through the Cambridge University Press. So the last one is a Temple G.B. Kelleher 2019, which I used for the racism experienced by the older Aboriginals, the prevalence, and the journals. So all these are the references which I used, and I last thank you so much for listening and giving your precious time to my video. Thank you.